Welcome to a Nothing from Nothing production. Hello, everybody. This is Mark Christopher with Bill Turley, and this is the Junction podcast, a podcast about growing up in Brooklyn in the 1970s and 80s. We're hoping to protect the names of the innocent as well as the extremely guilty, and there were plenty of those. Well, here goes. This particular episode is all about growing up in, I guess it would almost be the 60s and 70s.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Specifically around our experience I was in public grammar school plus Catholic grammar school and middle school. And I think that, Bill, you were in a Catholic...
I had a 12-year sentence, yes. Yeah, it was interesting. My dad taught in the New York City public school system. He was a high school teacher. And he taught at Sheepshead Bay High School, actually. And, he passed away back in 2011. But I found out years later that he was teaching at Sheepshead when Larry David was a student there.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. But in any case, though, interestingly, he kind of insisted that all 5 of the children in our family went to Catholic school. So, we went through the elementary school 8 years and then 4 years of high school. So, I think so. Today we're going to talk about the Catholic school experience in Brooklyn. So, just like a little background, like just about all of the churches the Catholic churches in Brooklyn had an elementary school attached to it, sometimes a high school too. And correct me if I'm wrong, but most people in Brooklyn identified where they lived by the church, the parish. What's your parish?
I live in the St. Thomas Parish.
Yeah, as opposed to a neighborhood, which is, you hear more about that in Brooklyn now. You hear, I live in Williamsburg or Bushwick or, Bedford-Stuyvesant, whatever. But back then it was parish, and it was a more concentrated area. And if someone told you what parish they came from, man, you knew you had a real demographic there, better than anything they could calculate today, and some parishes were rough.
All they helped the Christians was all Yankee fans.
Yeah.
We were all Met fans.
So I started out my youth in St. Vincent Ferrer Parish, which was on Glenwood Road, East 37th Street. And then we moved, and I went to elementary school at St. Teresa of the Little Flower.
Oh,
yeah. And which was on Avenue D and Troy Avenue. And we were taught there by this order of nuns called the Sisters of Mercy, which was a misnomer if I'd ever heard one.
Sisters of Mercy.
Yeah.
Unmerciful sisters.
Yeah. We had corporal punishment back then.
This is so unfamiliar to the kids of today, but effectively, in the Catholic schools, teachers were allowed to beat the crap out of them.
Oh, yeah,
And they did.
Yeah.
They did. I don't know which one to go first, but
I still have, nightmares about some of these things. I never used to get slapped around. I was
a good kid. I was the
bad kid. I did really well in school. I was always in the, top 3 nerds in the class, but I just witnessing kids getting slapped around is enough, I always think about this one kid. His name was Ralph, I think, and the nun picked him up by his tie, and she was swinging him by his tie. And, you think about it,
that's mild. That's mild.
He was 6 or 7 years old, But and in all fairness, there was some of the nuns were very kind, gentle people, and they were really, really wonderful. Many of them, but a lot of them not so much.
Well, my experience was startling because I went to PS 193. Right.
Okay.
First my father had gotten a job in Boston, in Arlington, Massachusetts, and I went there for 3 years. Right, and so I came back with this little Boston accent, with a poorly constructed haircut, and my mother would send me to school in a little suit. Could you imagine the culture shock with all these other little kids, mostly Jewish, in PS 193? There was this one kid that tortured me, absolutely tortured me. Total mughead Irish loser, kind of that stern face with the fucking angry crew cut. You could tell he was probably beaten at home all the time. So he'd come into school in the third grade and just fuck with every kid, you know? And my mother didn't understand. Well, he's dressed nice. He's dressed really nice. He's got a little suit on. He looks nice, you know? And I would get like tortured and smacked around.
I always pierced one thing.
Bedford Avenue and Avenue L.
Okay.
You know?
That's like Midwood.
Midwood, right? And so, you know, but this is about the Catholic experience. That experience, you know, it was just until I toughened up after about 4 or 5 beatings. I was in kind of like let's go smack the little Catholic school kid in the back of the head. It was like nonstop abuse. And I think, you know, I guess, you know, this might sound immodest. I think one of my strengths is making friends, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah.
So I had no friends. I had no friends.
You had no friends.
I had no friends, and except this one kid, Lance, who but like would tolerate me, and we, you know, but I had no friends, and people were like, it was quite a incredible culture shock. And I get in there, and then while I'm in that school, I mean, kids would gather around the bus stop to beat the shit out of me.
Really?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
in public school, right? And one kid was notoriously, and if you told me now, as empathetic and sympathetic I am to the human condition, if you told me that this kid, right, was, what is that phrase? If he was on fire, I wouldn't pee to put it out.
It's okay.
To this day, I hate that kid. If I found that kid today, I'd kick his ass. But anyways, I'm pretty sure I've done a lot better than him. But let's put that aside. So I moved from that to Catholic school, went back to Catholic school. And when I went back to Catholic school, this is mild childhood trauma stuff. This isn't crazy childhood trauma. It's mild, right? The teachers were sadists, and they got a kick out of fucking with the little kids.
So did you have brothers or nuns?
Both. And there was a smattering of equally sadistic, creepy lay teachers amidst that. And most of the crazy stuff happened in middle school.
Okay.
Right?
This was at where? St. Thomas Court?
St. Thomas. There was this guy, and I had navigated myself to a position where I generally didn't get beat up by them. I was almost a Bill Turley good guy.
Okay.
I wasn't quite a Bill Turley good guy, but I remember one time I had this voice when I was, for some bizarre reason, in the 7th grade. And in the 7th grade, I could enunciate and speak and read and sound like I'm from nowhere, right? So,
Delaware.
I'm from Delaware, right? So, there was a brother, Joseph Zielinski, famous predator of the time, right? And the serial killer. He's on ID, the ID channel now. I'm just kidding, but he was
No names, Mark.
That's right. Well, he's dead for 30 years. So he basically once he learned I could speak and read well, right? He would start the religion class and said, I'd like Mark to start from this biblical passage. So I would sit there and I'd go, and God created man, you know? And I would do this stuff. And after the 6th day, I became self-conscious. So after reading the Bible for an hour every 6 days, he didn't have any other kid read. Right? He started the school year with everybody reading, and they stumbled on me and just wanted me to read. And on the 6th day, right, you know, I went, and God, you know, I screwed it up because I was self-conscious that the whole class was listening to me. And he smashed me in the head with a big, thick King James Bible. To this day, I could use a cortisone shot. I mean, it was like, whoa, right on my head, and he screwed my neck up, right? And I was in like serious pain.
Really?
He did something a lot worse than that.
So I heard, okay, so you have to picture, you have all these parishes, these kids, you know, going to the elementary schools there, and eventually they go off to high school. And, you know, a lot of these high schools would draw kids from several different parishes. So where we went to high school, which was Nazareth High School, it was opened in 1962, and it was in, I guess, Flatbush, Canarsie, right on the border there. And so there were a lot of kids from St. Thomas. There were a lot of kids from Little Flower, St. Vincent, St. Jerome's. They all kind of converged there. And so we hear all the different stories about what went on in the various. I heard about a brother in St. Thomas who hung some kid out the window by his ankles.
Oh, yeah, this is true. I think it was Martin. Martin, right? So there was a teacher who, believe it or not, the lay teachers could be more sadistic than the brothers, right?
Yeah.
And there was a guy, Mr. H, let's call him, right? And we were in the third or fourth floor. You know, it was up in St. Thomas. And earlier in the day, they had the stairwell that went up, and there was windows to every stair thing, right?
Right.
And I literally saw this brother smacking this kid all the way up the stairs. You know, this poor kid was so abused. You know, smacked him up the stairs, all the way up the stairs, you know, like you could see them going up. And then later in the day, I don't even know if he acted up. I forget what happened, but, and I conflate who it might have been, but, you know, later in the day, to me, I'm pretty sure it's the same kid, right? So he's acting up and doing something, making fart noises or something, or we used to blow into the back of the class, and the teacher come over and then we get all quiet, you know? And then he'd come over, but this guy was having none of that. So he literally took the kid, right, and hung him outside the window, holding on to his hand.
Okay, so this is the story.
True story. He's hanging him out the window.
Yeah.
And nobody wanted that. So the rest of the time we were in that school year, we said he hung him out the window. Now the kid survived. He pulled him back in. The worst thing was these twins, and they were the oddest looking kids. They looked, you know, their face looked physically damaged. Let's just put it that way, right? And they were like paler than the white of anything you've ever seen.
Like a feet.
And hardcore brown hair, blue eyes. They looked like Data, if you know the reference in Star Trek.
Okay.
With a thinner head and a thinner neck.
Okay.
You know? And this guy just liked torturing them because they look so funny. So he literally, I don't know how he pulled this off because I don't remember seeing any skin, but he literally made them, maybe they had their underwear separate or something, but he made them wear their underwear outside their pants.
That's insane.
In front of the whole class. And then he made them kneel on their hands till they said uncle. And they refused to say uncle. Right? And this was insane. It was corporal punishment.
He'd be in prison.
He'd be in prison today.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I you know.
Had Child Protective Service.
Oh, he'd be so screwed. And so the things was, I actually know the teacher's name, and I know some of the teachers' names, and he was a sadist, right? But he was funny though. It was odd. He was like a funny sadist, right. You know. And then there was another teacher they had stopped from teaching because he was really bad. He used to pick on our friend Paul, who was going to join us for later. Okay, so used to pick on him all the time.
Oh, forget it. If one of these people zeroed in,
the three brothers, that they like the older two.
Yeah, and if one of them just like, you know, singled you out and zeroed in on you, so to speak, you were dead. That was it. Your life was miserable.
And my wife could not understand this because she went to St. Thomas, and the nuns were so nice to her.
Well, they segregated the boys and girls.
Which is dysfunctional.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time you're 13 years old, you're all ready to meet a girl.
Exactly.
You're frightened.
Yeah.
You're like, what are they?
Yeah. And so you look like this lunatic and charted, you know.
Yeah.
Kids who are basically hormones on legs.
Oh, they're hormones on legs. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they're separated for an X period of time. 12 years in your case, probably around 6 years in my case, where you're separated from girls, right? Girls are in a girls' school, boys are in a boys' school. And, you know, maybe there's some sociological reason why that makes some sort of sense, but it created an enormous amount of socialization issues, I believe, until I was in my late teens. You know, I looked at girls and I was like, wow, they are some alien creatures. And, you know, and you add the dynamic of the violence, you add the dynamic of the separation of the girls and the boys, and you add the dynamic of these extraordinarily large Irish families. And I remember this one comedian saying, I come from a family, you know, the big Irish family, yeah, right? Big Irish families where the youngest is 12 and the oldest is 68.
Well, yeah. Yeah, we had a 20-year span in our family.
Yeah, you had a 20-year span. Yeah. But the kids were so used to it, and they always used to tell me I was extraordinarily lucky that I never met Brother Richard.
Okay.
Brother Richard was one of those that got shipped.
Right.
And it wasn't for any sexual reasons. It was shorts, violent. Yeah. He broke a kid's jaw.
Yeah.
He broke a kid's jaw. There was an enormous amount of ill-suited human beings in the, that did, like, I knew more history, because, I'm a history freak, right? I knew more about history than they did, and they're up there ostensibly teaching us. And to my parents' credit, they were suspicious of them.
Yeah.
Right. And hanging out a window, smacking around, kneeling on hands through an entire period, which their hands would be all red and stuff, One time, I remember, it was the first time I listened to a Beatles record, actually, right? He wanted us to rewrite the Bible 5 times. That's what Brother Joseph told us to do. And we came back, right? And we all got headaches, and we all were sick, and the mother stopped us. And the mother stormed down to the school and said, "This ends." The next day, he was no longer teaching, And my mother one time confronted, I was a kid that would commonly have my shirt tail out. I mean,
I find that hard to believe.
That was my call. Yeah, shirt tail was out, right? And she used to constantly smack me for not putting my shirt tail in. And then my mother happened to see it once, and my mother gets out of the car, walks over, and says, "You ever do that again, I'm going to put you 6 feet under." My little mother, right? Your little Irish mother, because I'll put you 6 feet under. And after that time, I was so we had to meet. Yeah. And the nun literally grabs my cheek, goes, "Mark's a good boy, isn't she?" And my mother smacked her arm and says, "Don't you touch my son ever again." All right. And, so it was it got to the point where there were some decent teachers. We got to be fair, and some of them, almost all of them left the Brotherhood because I found out about them.
Yeah.
Like the ones that were good left.
Well, we had a lot of teachers in Nazareth that were former brothers.
Yeah.
They've been very brothers, and they were teaching as lay people in school, And most of them were pretty good guys. There were a couple of psychos, but
it's an odd culture.
Yeah.
Right? And,
well, in Nazareth, you had the brothers' residence on the top floor.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in Nazareth, I think some of the teachers literally did take it as a vocation that they were going to help shape young minds. They were going.
Oh, there were some great people there.
There were some great teachers, and I'm sure there was in the grammar school, there were in the middle school.
Oh, listen, don't get me wrong. Some of the nuns that we had were very, as I said, very kind, wonderful people. And then there was some, not so much, but, they tolerated them though.
Yeah,
they let them continue, teaching kids and abusing them, and
Yeah.
We were an altar boy by any chance?
No,
I was an altar boy. Okay, and the cool thing about that was that for a lot of the religious holidays, you got to cut out of class early, because you had to go serve mass during the day, and it was kind of cool, and you just automatically got to get out of jail free card, But I'm going to tell you a quick story about this. There was a Monsignor there, which there weren't too many of them. Most of them were just regular priests, but this guy was like he was a Monsignor, and he had been the pastor of the church at one point, and but he was retired, and he was what they call a pastor emeritus. He still lived there, he still said mass, but he wasn't really active in the administration. So there was one summer, I think it was the summer of 1970. Okay, I had this buddy, his name was Dennis. We were attached at the hip that summer. We both smoked our first cigarette, in the alleyway behind his apartment building. It was a great summer, And the two of us are walking up Avenue D, which was like the main drag in our neighborhood. And there was an older guy in front of us and his name was Mario. That's all I really remember about him. But he was an older guy, and what he was doing was he was lighting cherry bombs. And he was throwing them over the, storefront apartments along Avenue D. So, along Avenue D, you had all these stores and you had apartments on top of them. And he was like lighting the cherry bombs and just throwing them on top of the roofs. And they were making these loud,
cherry bombs were pretty, like almost small stick at an MA, like small stick at dynamite.
Yeah, and he might have mixed in a few MAs in there anyway. But, and Dennis and I think this is hilarious. We're 11. We think this is the funniest thing. So as it happens, like it's a summer night, it's like August, July, whatever. But the Monsignor is walking in the opposite direction, and he is like, appalled at this delinquent behavior, and he's raising his arms up, and he's shocked that this juvenile delinquent is throwing the cherry bomb. But I think he thought that it was us throwing the cherry bombs. And we had absolutely nothing to do with this, nothing at all, So summer goes by, and school starts, okay? And the way it was in Catholic school is you'd meet in the schoolyard, and you'd hang out with your friends or whatever. And then the bell would ring, you'd say the Pledge of Allegiance, and you'd line up with your class, and then they would march you up to your classroom, okay? So this Monsignor, Pastor Emeritus, used to stand on the corner and he'd make jokes with the kids and stuff like that. And he would, he'd tip his hat, and So anyway, we're marching up to the class, and all of a sudden he sees me and he stops dead and he looks at me and he goes, you juvenile delinquent, I'm going to get you, something like that. I don't know. I was 11, So like,
You're petrified. You're shaking.
I was terrified, because I didn't know what he was talking about, and like the kids are like aghast at this because I was the kid who never got in trouble. I always got really good grades, and everybody's kind of looking at me like, what did he do? The hell did he have? I was up to Monsignor, So, anyway, this goes on for like a couple of days, and but at the same time, I'm getting a little bit of street cred here too. It's like, I'm not the, dorky honor student anymore. I'm the bad boy, So, anyway, like I'm starting to really worry about this. I of course, I put two and two together, and I said to Dennis, because he went after Dennis too, a friend. I said, he thinks we were throwing cherry bombs that night, and it wasn't. I guarantee it was Mario. It wasn't us. What are we doing? And no. And then there was one girl in the class who. She was one of the taller girls, she was taller than anybody in the class. And she gets right in my face, I can remember the pigtails and the freckle face. And she's like, Charlie, because he's gotten people expelled from the school and you're going to get expelled. It was like, I just looked at her and I was like, shut up. And then I go back to my desk and I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, I am going to get expelled. This is fucked up. Yeah. So anyway, like, we have our meeting of the altar boys. I think it used to be like every 2 weeks or something, or once a month on Monday nights, And the priest that ran the altar boys, of course, he lived in the rectory with Monsignor. And after the meeting, he calls me over and he says, "Would you mind telling me what's going on with you and Monsignor, And I tell him the whole story, And he just looks at me and he goes, "Just stay away from him, will you? Please, just stay away from it." I was like, no problem. I don't lie. As soon as I see it, I'm going the other way. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm not even coming by his side of the building. Yeah. So, and that kind of ended it. But it was like,
I'm lucky. I could see how you could have like, I had it with some kids, but I never had it with like a teacher where it was like, when I see this guy, I'm going to have fear in my throat,
Yeah.
Because the thing that I'm struck as I'm remembering all this stuff is I would never want to hit a kid.
No.
I never hit my kids. My dad and mom never hit me. My mom hit me once, so maybe I deserved it. But I mean, I probably deserved it. You know what I mean? But I mean,
I can't imagine
smashing a child. I said
7-8-year-old kid.
Yeah, I saw that all the time.
What could possibly warrant doing that?
No. No, especially these kids, most of them were in some reasonable sense of behavior.
Yeah.
It wasn't like any of them were, but it was the corporal punishment was ingrained in the Catholic school system.
It was an order, it was more about the humiliation.
Yeah. Oh, the humiliation
for the peers and, And when I hear these people say, back in the old days there, they
hit me with the rule.
They smacked around. And then when you got home, you got in more trouble. Like, fuck that.
No,
that is so warped.
I know as soon as you knew that was how insane it was, that's why they created a whole generation of helicopter parents. You're not going to touch my kid, I'll fuck you up. You're like,
Yeah.
And it's like they created, now that they've kind of rejected that, because I see huge gangs of bike riding kids, nice kids all around my neighborhood here in Oakdale, right? They're all around and they're driving around.
It's a beautiful area.
It's a beautiful area, I got to tell you.
It really is.
Yeah, it's wild. And again, this is all my experience, relatively myopic viewpoint coming from my perspective. I think the societal evolution I experience is like Newton's third law of motion, where he positioned that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Our generation grew up with limited oversight and limited governance with the institutions, whether it was the schools or the police. There was a lot more hands-off approach to reviewing how they were performing it. And our parents, as second-generation immigrants, had to run on instinct. Nobody left them a rule book, so this isn't a blame game here. But that particular group had a lot more veneration, blind veneration, specifically for the Catholic Church in particular. And that was ill-founded. And then we became parents. We became sort of the helicopter parents, where we clamped down on those institutions, ensuring that all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted, and we monitored our kids every step. The pendulum probably swung in its own way, probably swung a little too extreme. And that's what we have and what I saw today.
Get the fuck out of here.
Say goodbye, Bill.
This is Bill Turley. I'm here with my buddy Mark Christopher. We had a blast today talking about Brooklyn and the Junction. And the Junction. So I hope to see you again on our next installment of the Junction.
Thanks for joining us. Take care, guys. Just Sliding Around. Written, recorded, and performed by William Turley.